may have noticed quite a few videos on my channel that are actually not JSRF related. This is weird, right? I mean, isn't it the only game you play? The only game you've ever known and it's your entire life and everything? Well, yes, but no. There are a few other games, believe it or not, that I play as well. And one of these games I've been playing for many years is Toy Story 3. Most of the Toy Story 3 videos on my channel are without context, and the viewer that is unfamiliar to the game might just see these videos as an achieved time, and that's it. In this video, I'm going to explain why I've spent so many hours on the bullseye races in this game, and also why I do not play it all that much anymore. Just for now, I'm going to go through what I believe to be the single most acclaimed bullseye race, but who knows, perhaps in the future, if this video might get some good reception, I could go over some of the other 10 bullseye races. The race in question for this video is the Canyon Race. This race is one of the first ones to be unlocked when purchasing Bullseye in Al's Toy Barn. Now the goal is relatively simple. Jump over each one of the barricades and try to finish with the fastest time possible. The layout of the race is also pretty standard. It takes place within a canyon and has several twists and turns throughout. The run I'm about to show you was achieved on June of 2017 and was the first ever sub 57 second run to be done on the Xbox 360. Once the run completes, I will explain exactly what happened. The fact that this run was played on the Xbox 360 is quite significant. At the time this run was achieved, I had just begun testing out a switch of consoles from the Wii. This switch turned out to be very beneficial, as because of the physics changes and limitations on the Wii, time is lost in almost every instance. Now, what happened at the start of the run? You might have noticed that Bullseye seemed to be sliding while keeping an idle animation. This is called the sliding glitch. When Bullseye runs into a barricade taking damage, he will slide forward for a brief period of time. Now, if the race is restarted during the sliding state, Bullseye will continue to slide until the countdown is over. There is one more optimization that can be bundled into this beginning section, however. When holding the right trigger to sprint as Bullseye, restarting the race quick enough to maintain the sprint animation after the screen fades to black allows Bullseye to accelerate instantly, saving time. On to the next section of the run that may have looked a bit confusing. Bullseye seemingly jumps off nothing, and this is true. There is no invisible platform there. So why does this work? Well, in the Bullseye races, the player is given some extra frames to jump from a platform. There are many instances where delaying a jump could be beneficial to gain cornering or some extra distance. The next part of the run may have seemed a bit straightforward, but is actually a bit complicated. Almost every sharp turn that involves hugging a wall utilizes what is called a pixel turn. Now this glitch is a bit hard to explain without playing the game yourself, so I'll try to do my best here. Whenever Bullseye is aligned with a wall and is hugging the farthest out pixel, but not running into it, keeping Bullseye on that pixel while moving along the general direction of that wall will seemingly glue Bullseye to it. A good example of this glitch can be seen on the Red Rock Ring Race during this sharp turn. One more notable moment at the very end of the run was the apparent gliding that happened once running into the wall here. In the run, I allowed Bullseye to run into the wall because I knew that the part I would hit would eject Bullseye at a favorable angle. Running into a wall without holding a direction and only holding the right trigger to sprint will allow Bullseye to keep speed along the wall, and whichever angle that the wall is angled towards, Bullseye will also face. There's one more thing that I have not yet talked about, and that is the timer. Now, I have concluded that the timer displayed at the top of the screen is just unreliable in giving a gauge for your current pace during a run. But this does not mean that the end result is incorrect. Some displayed timers either start super late or super early, but this does not affect the ending time. How the final time is calculated, however, is still somewhat of a mystery to me. I've had so many runs that were retimed using the most logical method of the run starting when the player gains control of Bullseye to when the last checkpoint disappears on screen. But for every instance, the times just do not seem to add up. Because of this issue, I had realized that adding 0.3 seconds to every retime seemed the most realistic in regards to the actual result. Thus, I deemed this fix the 0.3 rule. The run of 56 seconds would last for only about a month, until being beaten on July of 2017 with a time of 55 seconds. I'm going to show you the run shortly, but see if you can point out where some time saves may have occurred. Were you able to see it? Well, there were actually quite a few instances of time being saved almost everywhere in the run. I'm sure that even to the naked eye, most would see that the turns and overall movement were much less shaky and solid. Once retiming the run, the exact time comes out to be 55.59. But if we use the 0.3 rule, a more accurate time would be 55.89. Now there was one major optimization that was needed to achieve this 55, and one that would become the strategy that is always used today. It comes right here, once doing a 180 turn and falling off into a lower section. Now instead of just running off the edge and going into the cliff head-on, it was found that jumping into it can give a better angle, as well as utilizing aspects of the pixel turn, as Bullseye can stick to the roof of the cliff. When the 55 was first achieved, I believed it to be unbeatable with the strategies used. With so high quality of a run, and still just barely reaching the 55-second mark, I wouldn't touch the level for a long time afterwards. It wouldn't be until nearly 2 years later, on February of 2019, that a new strategy would arise that would completely change the way the level would be played forever. 54 seconds. It was finally achieved after what can be observed as 13 fails listed on the screen. But what even just happened? Well, when taking a look at the level's layout one day, I realized that the checkpoint right after this one is right next to it. The only issue being that it's pretty high up, and seems impossible to reach it without taking the route around like normal. But then I realized these boxes that are stacked up right before the checkpoint might just barely give enough height to cross the gap. And so when I finally made it across, I was shocked, and was just barely hanging on in attempts to avoid any huge mistakes afterwards. This strategy is no easy task to pull off. In fact, it very well may be the hardest strategy that is used in all of the bullseye races. This is mainly because the turn requires the player to hold different directions on the left stick at the same time that the camera is being turned on the right stick to get the correct angle. And not to mention that you are forced to jump off of the barricade to be able to land on the boxes while this is all going on. This run was retimed to a 54.83 with the 0.3 rule. There were quite a few visible mistakes throughout the run, for example when I got stuck here, and some general shaky movement throughout. But still, a 0.83 decimals pretty high. Is 53 or lower even possible? Well, just 1 month later, on August of 2019, I would challenge just that, in what might be described as my greatest recorded performance of the canyon race ever. It was done. Not only was the 54 beaten, but it was retimed at a 53.38 with the 0.3 rule, meaning that this run saved 1.5 seconds from sheer movement alone. The run had near perfect turns with straight movement everywhere. Many sections of this run seemed too good to be true, while under the pressure of knowing that I was on pace with the box shortcut. Right here, when seemingly jumping off of thin air, was a miracle that was only possible because of what I mentioned earlier about getting a few extra frames to jump off of a platform. And finishing this run with a near-perfect turnaround section, getting the pixel turn, and going all the way to the end. To be completely honest, I'm not sure if there is realistically any time to be saved that is substantial enough to achieve 52 seconds. As far as some other known strategies, different colored goo can be purchased from Al's Toy Barn that can either shrink or grow Bullseye, along with his hitbox. But for this level, the shrinked Bullseye hitbox is just too small to execute the box shortcut, and Giant Bullseye seems to take up too much space, and often gets stuck when attempting to corner tightly. Now, this may seem like it's the end of the story, but let me give a follow-up to what I mentioned at the start of the video, and that is that I have not played this game in quite a long time. The sole reason being that I don't really have a reason to. You see, I've spent so much time into optimizing the Bullseye races in Toy Story 3 that I truly don't see any improvement being possible for any of the current world records. But I don't see it as being an end just yet. For the longest time, I've always yearned for competition in the bullseye races. And that is why I'm challenging you all who have made it this far into the video to try and match my world records, or even to come up with some much needed new strategies. So that's it. If you really did stay till the end, then thank you so much. This is a type of video that I am somewhat unfamiliar with, but that I've always wanted to do for a long time. I hope everything in this video was easy enough to follow, and I'll see you next time.